esteemed members of the Island Council and Executive Council, Register, Mr. Peter Levinson, members in the audience and those on social media who's listening, good afternoon. We're gathered here once again today for our next Central Committee meeting of the public entity of Saba. Before I continue, I would like to say, absent with notice from Council Lady Elsa Peterson and also Commissioner Everton Hannibal. Both of them are abroad. At this time, before I continue, I would like to wish all men in the world and also in Saba a happy Men's Day as they celebrated today. I know they had a celebration on Saturday. I forgot about that, but nonetheless, after this meeting, we all can celebrate again. Men have made positive contribution to society, and community, family, marriage, child care, and the environment. We will continue to do this with the help of our Almighty Father. Council members, we move on now to point number 2 on the agenda, approval of the agenda. Everybody agree? Approval of the minutes, seeing that we don't have any now, we'll have them in the next meeting. Agree? False. Citizen rights to speak on the agenda, there's nobody. 5, origin, wrong. Concerning amount of questions from the Island Council incoming correspondence list during the period of August 30th to October 31st, 2025, based on Article 18. 5.1, Island income and outgoing correspondence. 5.2, executive decision list. 5.3, written questions to the Executive Council, Article 25. 5.4, answering written questions to the Executive Council, based on Article 35. We move over then to point 6 on the agenda, Island Council Proposal 2025, third budget amendments. I give the floor now to Commissioner Sagers of Finance. Thank you. Commissioner?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon to everyone here and also following on social media. This is the third quarter implementation report and budget amendment for 2025. This is more so a formality that takes place during the course of the budgetary year. It is based on adjustments that's made on the budget that was passed for the year 2025. There is no real changes in policy, and the budget amendment is more so tweaking individual budgets where there's perhaps underspending or a bit overspending based on rising costs or unexpected events. This is a requirement based on FinBES, and this budget amendment has been already approved by the CFD, and the advice on improvements has also been taken into consideration. So with that, I conclude my initial reaction on the third budget amendment.
All right. Councilman Charles had sent in written questions from in the last Central Committee meeting, and he was told that he would be answered now in this Central Committee meeting. Commissioner. I don't know which commissioner you get forward to.
Forward to executive.
To the Executive Council.
Maybe after this we can get to those questions after this budget.
Okay. All right.
That's okay with everybody.
Yeah. What's on the trial?
For the budget amendment?
Yeah. Okay, no.
So, you have any questions for the budget amendment in regards to? In previous discussions, we emphasized aligning the budget and related documents, including the budget amendments, with the government program. Is the Executive Council in agreement with this approach, and when can the Council expect to see these changes implemented? And the second question is, while efforts have been made to improve accessibility and readability of the budget amendments, members of the public still express concerns about how information is presented. What further steps is the Executive Council taking to enhance clarity and communication?
Thank you, Council Member. If I may, I would first like to start and say, of course, we agree that, whatever's in the governing program, or, whether it be that or the Saba package, it should be easy to find, how that relates to the budget or budget amendments. I would also like to point out that, I think over the years, and I say this with confidence, we have seen the readability of the budget document greatly improved, and that's also being echoed by members of the Island Council and Tax. There's also a few realities, one being that we still fall under financial supervision, regardless of how we perform with financial management. I believe that was highlighted also yesterday in a presentation to the Island Council by the CFD, if the Island Council got the same presentation that was given to the Executive Council. So I do believe that we are doing quite well in financial management. Yesterday, at least in the meeting that we had, was also expressed, and even it was introduced by a member of the board of the CFD, that perhaps the results of that analysis should be made public, because the reality is that anytime it concerns figures, it's difficult for many persons in our community, or even persons within the organization, to see how that necessarily relates to a budget and how things are being implemented, or what exactly it really means. Whereas the analysis that the CFD created, I believe that gives perhaps a different type of insight into what happens within government and how the public entity is performing. I do believe that the ambition is there to make the steps. The ambition is there that we can see, and the public can see what's in the governing program versus how that translates into figures within the budget. I hope that by Q1 for 2026 we can again see an improvement there. But then the second reality is that before the finance department is finished writing one report, we have to start writing the other one. So until we get out of this financial supervision regime that has been hanging over our heads unfairly, I believe, it's going to be quite difficult to really put efforts into seeing perhaps what the Island Council wants to see, or even myself as the Commissioner of Finance would like to see into the reports. Because the third reality is the mandatory paragraphs, which also further complicate the readability of the document. So I do think that steps has been made. I do believe that steps will continue to be made. But until we fall out of financial supervision, where more attention can be given to 2 reports versus 4 reports, I think that it will take a bit more time. But I do hope that improvements are going to be made in Q1 of 2026.
May I follow, Mr. Chairman? I just have, and I think maybe my question wasn't pointed enough, because it's not only about specifically document, because I think the wealth of information shared in document is important, and it's good, for us to have insight into what was shared. And I also think, when I listened to the CFD yesterday, it was great to hear that they are very much impressed and continue to be, dazzled by the financial management here on Saba, in particular in comparison to other islands. But what I'm asking is more about, I don't think that many people, especially general people, don't like to see figures. I, for myself, I'm not a fan of that. So people just want to be able to see a snapshot of what's happening with the budget, what's happening with the budget amendment, and that's more along the lines of what I'm talking about. Maybe a A4 with just some information, graphical, and also something that I think you have to write here to the board that shares some insight into where are we spending money. Because yeah, it's a lot of budget, but people also want to know, hey, how much are you spending on roads? How much are you spending on community development? So it's more about those things and less about because I understand, and as you pointed out unfairly, we have to write 3 or 4 documents annually, for financial reporting, and I do hope that sooner or later, or rather sooner, it becomes less. But I think it's important to know that we also provide just, something that we can share with the public. Hey, this is where government is spending their money. All right, that's basically what I meant. So it wasn't about how to make this specific document one. It's about maybe a document that is more accessible for the general public. That's good.
Awesome.
We don't have
Council Lady Saskia. Commissioner, on page 9.
No, I still got questions about the budget.
Oh, in January 2022, the Executive Council approved, we have the BC number, BC 099/2022, the purchase of a land for new parking area, which you know about, right? It explains the situation and with the different areas and things. Really and truly, I thought all that was done. We had went to court. I was surprised not to read it that they still have property. Some of the heirs haven't gotten none of the money, only 2 of them.
Yeah, indeed that is the case. The notary did finalize the process and the money has been earmarked.
Yeah.
So the reserve has been created. But not all the heirs came forward during that first initial stage with the correct documents. And so one set has been paid, as far as I know, but now a second set has come forward. And that process now continues, so this is more so releasing the funds that the other set can be paid. But it's more of a legal process than anything else.
Okay. Thank you. And then I wasn't here. You were yesterday. On page number 12, Gills Quarter Road Project. The projects continue to be in progress and aligned with its primary 2025 goals. Construction of the first phase of the road. However, adjustments have to be made to implement the timeline due to delays in the contract signing and difficulty securing material to complete the first phase. And I know, but the community don't know. Can you give a good explanation of that? What's happening?
Yeah, that was more so when the original contract was being tendered. And also about the quotation that was received versus the amount of money that was available at that moment in time. So then it was decided, rather than to have the contract done all at once, that a contract would be split. So the first phase, which is being executed now, and then afterwards, when the money was secured, which has been more recently, in the last budgetary cycle in the Netherlands, where announcements were made about different things for the islands. The second part of the budget was made available. So it's more of a technical way of approaching it, that we can split it in half, that a project could actually start, versus delaying it until we had all the money all at once to do it in one full go.
Thank you. Any more questions? Anything to the public amendment? Can we agree that we can handle this conversation in the island council? We think? Thanks. Yeah. Well, thank you. We will move over now to point 7 on the agenda. I was just reminded, Commissioner, by my register, that last week, I think Commissioner Charles had entered some questions, and he said he would like Councilman in writing.
Are you prepared?
Sorry, Councilman Charles. Sorry. When was the Councilman Charles had sent in questions? He said he would like them in writing. How far are you with that?
There was 2. There was one for me, for Pico. So there was one for Leon. Yeah, there was one for Pico. So the Leon was for Commissioner Haligan, and the Pico was for You want me to read out your question?
Yeah.
So the question that, good afternoon, thank you for the question which Island Council member, Mr. Charles, flagged from the decision list was deregistration from PIVA. The question he posed was, with the enforcement of the law on personal registration, how does the Executive Council view sharing information with residents in regards to what it takes to maintain registration on the island, and what are the consequences of not meeting the requirements? So, begin by answering, a person is considered a resident of Saba if they live on the island. When someone is registering for the first time and they are not yet listed in the population registries, we require that they have spent at least 2/3 of half a year on Saba. This period does not need to be consecutive, but it is the first requirement for initial registration. For persons who have already been registered as residents, the rule is that they must be deregistered if they are absent from Saba for more than 2/3 of a year. In practice, this means that someone may be away from the island for a maximum of 8 months within a 12-month period, but this must be assessed per period. There should never be a situation in which a person is continuously absent from Saba for more than 8 months in 1 year, as this requires official deregistration. These regulations are communicated to the public and are also published on the official website of the public entity. When people register, they are informed that any change of address on the island must also be reported. We also distribute information flyers and brochures and publish regular Facebook posts on this topic. This also applies to persons who move abroad. A point of confusion in the past has been the students who go to the United States for study purposes. These students may remain covered under their parents' health insurance, ZACN, even if they are deregistered from the population registry. However, they are required to personally contact ZACN to arrange this. We will continue to communicate this information actively to ensure clarity among residents and students. Answer your question.
For me, it's just more about, thank you very much for the clear answer first. But for me, it's more about ensuring that people are aware of the requirement in regards to ordinary requirement. What happens when they fail to, for instance, inform you, or that maybe they may be off island for a longer period of time, and then something happens, and then they get deregistered. So I think it's about providing information to persons that deregistration is a possibility, especially with extended periods of time off island. Because I think sometimes people have reminded they felt they were deregistered without any real valid reason for doing that. And maybe they were away for an extended period of time with a family member, or in another country, and then they were deregistered.
That's a good point, Ed, but I'd like to inform you and whoever that going to deregistering is also not a 1, 2, 3 process. For example, it takes 3 times to inform at the address of the person, and then you get 1 letter, and then 6 weeks has to pass between that, and then the second letter, and another 6 weeks has to pass between that before it moves over to do Amtshalve deregistration. So that time there is a few months in that process of deregistering. So it's not, that the census office persons or whoever get information that Vito's not on the island, and then it's moved over to deregistering. That process is a few months, so the person should know, or someone should know to inform that person of that. So those letters also have to be to the post office, have to be delivered at the address of the person, not at the post office. So we ensure that, and then we take that step as well. So we go a little bit above what is legally required of us. The same thing, I'll go with a different one, was the handing out of the voting passes. As we all know, this election, we again did it that we had persons in-house going out to do that, but technically, we could do like other islands and just allow the post office to do that, but because we don't feel confident of that, we engage our own civil servants to go to the addresses of the person to make sure that that person does that. So that is how that process takes place. But back to what you asked, it's not a 1, 2, 3. That person gets deregistered. It takes time, but people also need to, educate themselves of the process. Because some people go away and they don't ask or they don't, but it is a responsibility of the person as well. The same thing with if we go on, I don't know if you saw yesterday, only 22% of persons from Saba are born in Saba. It was a few years ago, 30-something%, now it's 22%. And that's because, many babies are born on St. Martin. But the law also stipulates that within 5 days of returning, you have to go to the civil registry to register the birth of the child. So you get a birth certificate on St. Martin, but then upon return, so all these things we inform persons, but then it's ultimately up to them to come to the census office to do it.
Maybe in your explanation, not just only what I missed. What is the trigger for deciding somebody to register from the island? Or
Well,
for
for
instance,
us,
because you
it's
say
a
that's a
signal. For us, a civil registry is a signal. But then I want to let you know, as of late, ZACN and the IND, because those are national organizations, they rely on the information of the border control. So you do also have persons that are being taken out of the ZACN registry because they are not fulfilling what is required by the census office. But they don't, that information is not always shared with us, but a few persons that have been informed that have been deregistered from ZACN because, that's a national government, so the ZACN, border control, they are on one page, and then they are deregistering persons who don't have a valid legal status, or they've been away for X amount of, I said 8 months within a year. But then by us, if you don't know something, you can't do something. But if the signal is brought that Vita has been gone for a year, then then they can start that process. So all that is listed in the civil registry law, what the civil service of the civil registry can do. So you may have heard also of a few people that don't have health care anymore, but that's from ZACN and the border control. So though all these systems in the future will be tied in, will be a seamless tie-in, so then the border control will eventually, I think it happens already on Bonaire, but the border control will then give a signal to the census office, and then they will start a process of deregistering. And that process, like I said, is first a letter goes to the address of the person, and then you have 6 weeks to reply, and then a second letter goes, you have another 6 weeks, and then the third one is that you're deregistered.
Just using my own self as an example. So if I would leave Saba for 8 months under the system, it would then trigger the border control to inform census because left the island.
And more than 8 months.
More than 8 months.
The process of deregistering can start.
I think so that's important. It's important for people to be informed.
Yeah.
Yeah. But thank you for sharing that.
Councilman?
Yeah, I just had a follow-up about the, how does it work for it's also for the West Island, right? It's just
The 3 islands, yeah.
Okay. So if you leave Saba and you go to Bonaire for 8 months, does it also trigger? Or is there a different rule for that?
Yeah, because the address is on the
Correct.
signal.
Yeah, I was just curious.
Yeah, because that's why you see, we went to Bonaire, for Bonaire they scan the passports. Okay, between Saba and Station they don't scan it. But I did notice that when we went to Bonaire they do scan the passport.
Well, the reason why I asked is because, of course, if you go from Amersfoort to another.
Yeah. Well, you are legally, you do have to change the address from Amersfoort to Amsterdam. You should.
Yeah.
We see in the European part of the Netherlands, they have also within the system, because then you get into the BSN and the Duo and all these other things, and the DigiD, because then you have to do it, because then that would have complicated, things for your car insurance and everything.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes. Any more questions? No, the others, the yoga architecture. Yes. All right.
We move over now.
He had those two questions.
Oh,
Okay. There was a second question from Councilmember Charles about the assignment, the Yongo architecture. The question reads as follows. La Yongo Architecture has been given the assignment to give advice on a new building regulation. Considering that La Yongo Architecture has already designed buildings on the island and may also do so in the future, how does this assignment assure objectivity in this process? Could a firm with no connection to the island not be given this assignment? Well, the reason for the assignment is that right now there is a movement to implement the best code regulation. Now, in the best code regulation, there's no distinction between, what we on Saba will consider a self-build. People that come together to build a house, a simple structure versus, for example, a structure like what's being built for the hospital. So the idea of involving Leongo, who does have that experience, not just here on Saba, but also within the Caribbean. So he knows the norms, he knows the cultures, he knows how things work even on a smaller scale. But what he also brings to the table is that he's also very familiar with the national norms of some of what is being brought over into the best building codes. So it brings both parts of experience, both locally and from the national side together, and that's something that he offers that's a bit unique. Second to that, and I don't know how much is actually shown into the decisions when questions are being flagged from the decision list. Part of that also means that once that advice is received from the Yongo, we will also meet with local contractors to get their insight, to get their opinions as to what they think, what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. So the idea is to come with one solid piece of advice that brings, the professionalism and experience that Leongo brings, but then also with input from those that have feet on the ground here on Saba that has, years of experience completing projects.
Thank you.
that was it. We move over now to point 7 on the agenda, and I hereby close this meeting.
This meeting of the Island Council of this, the 19th day of November 2025 is now called to order. Officially open. I would like to ask everyone to please stand for the Saba anthem. Thank you. You may receive it. I have one announcement. Island Council Lady Ms. Elsa Peterson is absent, and the notice, and Commissioner Evan Hager is absent with notice. Agenda point number 2, approval of the agenda. The agenda be approved as yes. The agenda is approved. Agenda point number 3, approval of the minutes of the Island Council meeting of October the 16th, 2025. Everyone has received from the registrar. Let's go. Okay. The minutes of the Island Council meeting of October the 16th, 2025 are approved. Agenda point number 4, oral question time in accordance with Article 36 of the Rules of Procedure. Island Council Member Mr. Peter Charles had 2 questions that he had sent in.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is in regards to connectivity, in particular airfares, because I think we are all aware, I think since the last meeting, just before the last meeting, there was a significant increase in fares by rail. And of course that has an impact on the island. Even recently when we were in St. Martin, I spoke to somebody whose family is from Saba and lives on Saba, and they told me that they had been thinking about coming to Saba and decided against it because when they looked at the ticket prices, they thought they were way too high, and they think that they're not sure when they visit Saba again. So it's not it's clearly something that's having an effect not only on tourism on residents, but also on families and family visitation. So I think it's something that needs to be addressed. And we know that one tool that can be used to that, the tool the Dutch government has, is PSO. So I'd like to ask the Executive Council if they prepared a response to the PSO study, and if they have not, when do they expect to finalize and present one? I think this is also important because, for instance, when we were at Stacia, I remember the Island Council there, They also didn't have one from their government, and we didn't have one from our government. And it's good to at least synchronize positions. And at least when we're meeting with other people, that we can say, hey, this is the position of the public entity of Saba, I'm Governor of Saba, in regards to the study that was carried out. So that's my first question. Of course, there was an election in the Netherlands, everybody voted October 29th. Everybody, a lot of people are saying voted. And with newly elected members of the second chamber taking their seats and formation talks currently underway, because the Executive Council have strategy for engaging with various parties to ensure that connectivity and the PSO topic are considered for inclusion in the coalition, in the eventual coalition agreement. So those are my two questions.
Thank you for that. Commissioner Sagers?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Also, thank you, Councilmember Charles, for questions. With regards to formal reaction on the PSO study, from what I understand is that such a study is not even fully completed yet, so it's difficult to have a final position on it. About 2 weeks ago, we actually received a request to allow for exit surveys to take place at the airport so that you can gather additional information that will further add to the PSO study, because they want to revise the version that still has not even been completed yet. But yeah, I agree. It's quite strange because it's being referred to a lot, not just here but also in the Netherlands. But actual study is still in the process of being formalized, even though it's going through the rounds to make it a formal law. So that's where that's at right now. The person that was the main contact, within the Ministry of Way, that was, I guess, the one most involved with the PSO, Marianne van Kiezen. She was here, I believe it was last week. When she returned to the Netherlands, she actually retired. So now it's to take up contact with her replacement and see exactly what the process is going to be. I do think that we are at a stage now that I believe both locally and nationally, the idea of connectivity, PSO, the ridiculous prices, because the prices are ridiculous, it does have the attention of everyone. Personally, I've been reaching out to people that I know are involved with some of the parties that are being spoken to with regards to forming a coalition. And although there's no guarantees that they bring it as part of the conversation, but at least I reach out and say, hey, come on, we spoke about it so many times. Can you please make this a part of how things are being addressed, specifically for Saba and Statia? So I hope that how that part is, does help, but there's no guarantees again. But also, I do believe it's important that we do come with a document. It's not necessarily a reaction to a PSO study, but one that lays out our priorities of what we think is necessary. And of course, this document needs to be a bit more broad than just connectivity. But that's something that we need to have ready before the visit to the Netherlands in December, because Island Councils want to be there. I don't know if there's other meetings that the council will have with ministries, but because of the Walbest Finbest conference, I'm also going to be there during that week. That's something that was decided last week. So I believe such a document it needs to be ready before then. The VNK is also asking for such a document because normally the role of the VNK is that they bring forward pieces from municipalities, but they also want to do the same for the islands. So we need to have a message that's consistent, that speaks about the problems. And I do believe the whole connectivity issue, because it's bigger than just a winner price. That has a big impact on the economy. It has an impact on people able to move around. And if people can't get here, the economy discussion is bigger than just saying, just throw the word about, economic growth. But if people can't get here, that has an impact on businesses, maintaining jobs, hotels being able to operate. And, while the ferries are there, they'll never replace air connectivity. So this is something that we have to make a priority in the coming weeks, that we have something ready, not just for VNK, but then also our own individual contacts. And whatever meeting we can bring forward those concerns, we have to do so.
Thank you. Commissioner, but that's a lot of bureaucracy. That sounds like a lot of bureaucracy, to be very honest with you. And, you know, I was talking to somebody recently, and actually 15 years too late. After the dissolution of Nelson Tills, clearly we knew, Samantha made it clear, you guys are no longer, you know,
Yes.
you're close to us,
But we're Dutch.
we don't have any responsibility, any obligations to us, to you. And from there on, you see that every decision that they've made is in their own interest. When there's a commercial company, it has to make a profit, like I explained to somebody yesterday, the Caribbean is littered with airlines that have failed because of the government or significant government interference. So we don't want the same thing from Winnie. You know, there's interference, and then the airline has to fold, and then there's no connectivity at all to see. But at the same time, I think we can't just wait for the Dutch government to take steps. We can't, because it's too pressing. And you know, when we spoke to one of our trainers, you know, he was mentioning that in the community where he worked, they hired a public relations executive to go in and personally speak to all second chamber parties in second chamber to convince them of what was important for them. And I think that's something we might need to do now, considering the urgency in the situation. You know, it's a new idea, you might have to think about it for some time, but I think it's something worth looking into. Because, you know, we go to Nellis and we speak with them, we introduce the idea, but then we're not there. And you know, there's always a fine in that. That's why there's a government, you know, there's an election every couple of years. And I think we really need to start convincing. That's why, for instance, I asked for a response, so that they have a response. And, you know, like he said, they've made an A4 expressing, hey, this is what we need, why it's important. And they just went around selling that idea until changes are made. So maybe that's something that we also need to do. You know, there was a big fight on social media this week because of, you know, the prices, and rightfully so. It's unbearable. It's ridiculous. It's all those nice words, crazy words, but nothing's being done. And then you say that the Dutch government says, yeah, we need additional information. But when I read the PSO study, back to front, and it outlines clearly why it's important and that it is necessary. And at the end, you see what they say? It's a lack of political will and political commitment. And this, to me, is just the Hague kicking the can down the road just one more time.
Thank you, Councilmember Charles, Councilmember Every.
Yeah, on the same topic, it's good that you brought the topic up. We did meet with the Island Council of Statia last week, and this was a very important topic. I think it's relevant for both islands. And one of the things that came forward, I think, for us and also for them, was the rep on the shareholders rep. Do you know this person? Is there a name of this person? And if it exists, do they even exist? Correct. And the next thing that you mentioned about the document, I do agree, since we're all going to the Netherlands, that was also something that we jointly agreed upon with the Council of Station, is that we should have the same message, or the same, everybody speak with the same voice. And you referenced a document. Is that a commitment that you will have, that we can have something done before we leave? Yes, I think so. If we can all agree to that we have
It will be broader than just.
Correct. No, I agree. But at least we have something where we're all speaking the same language on all levels. So, and in that light, I would also suggest to reach out to your counterparts on Statia as well, so that they strengthen numbers.
I mean, we have different priorities, but at least with connectivity, it's a shared problem.
Correct. That's
Commissioner Segers.
I do have an initial reaction to the proposal by Councilmember Charles about involving like a type of PR company to help bring our message forward. And my initial reaction is a bit. I don't know if that's a move that we may need to make now, simply because, you know, I speak to people in the Netherlands all the time. You know, more recently when we were on to Vlieland, I believe the access that we have to, you know, members of parliament and within ministries, believe it or not, is greater than the access that, you know, a regular municipality has in the Netherlands. And I'm not sure I want a PR firm replacing that, or, you know, replacing that type of relationship that we're able to build person to person. You know, I don't know if that's the right message that we want to send, or all of a sudden, you know, we're paying lobbyists to speak on our behalves, even though it's our message that we're trying to tell. But again, that's more so based on, you know, conversations that I've had with people that are in similar positions that I am in, that say that, you know, the access that we have is for sure bigger than the access that they have, and they're the ones living within the European part of the Netherlands. So that's just an initial reaction. That's not me saying that I'm completely against it, but that's just me saying that maybe it's something that we need to think further about before we actually make that type of commitment.
There's an idea,
Yeah.
and I put it out there, it's not to say. I'm asking for a commitment.
Yeah.
Those were the questions posed, the oral questions posed in accordance with Article 36 by Councilman Charles and answers. We now proceed to agenda point number 5. Incoming correspondence and announcements list from October the 4th until October the 31st, 2025. We go to 5.1. Island Council incoming and outgoing correspondence.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to flag BAC 343, 2025, ICM, strengthening local public health role in healthcare referral monitoring. For that point.
Okay, good. That's for 5.1. Now, 5.2. Executive Council decision list.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to flag the meeting October 21st, 3.1.2, Integrity Summit.
Okay, thank you. And we will just that. And 5.3, written questions to the Island Executive Council, of course, Article 35 of the Rules of Procedure. And then 5.4, answers to written questions to the Executive Council. Okay. We then move on to agenda point number 6, Island Council Proposal 2025, number 19, the third budget amendment. So the proposal received from the Executive Council is to approve the third budget amendment. This was just dealt with in the Central Committee meeting. So we need to further discuss it over. We agreed upon to make it the hammer piece in accordance with the article, the rules of procedure of the Island Council. No vote is required. No vote was requested, so this can be adopted without a roll call vote. So the third budget amendment 2025 is approved. We then move on to agenda point number 7, motions. We received a motion by Island Council member Mr. Julio Everett, and I'll allow him to elucidate his motion.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I read the motion, I would just like to make a quick statement. First of all, this motion is presented to bring equality and clarity to all travel and per diem rules. The current framework dates back to 2011 and has not been updated since then. And over time, this has led to differences in how travel per diem allowances are applied across government and something that I have questioned before, but for which I have never received a satisfactory answer. And today we have somewhat of different rules depending on where in government one falls. This creates unnecessary inequality from my purview, and administrative burdens and public perception risks. With one unified framework, we treat everyone on the same basis. We comply with the Rijksrekening and obligation for civil servants, and we create more transparency and administrative efficiency for the organization. The adjustments for transportation allowance reflect realistic cost developments and mandatory mandatory travel insurance protects both the traveler and the public budget in today's higher risk travel environment. This motion therefore does not increase privilege, it reduces inequality and establishes one clear standard. And importantly, Mr. Chairman, I wish to stress that this is not a special rule made up by Julio or Island Council Member Julio Avery. This motion is designed to promote openness, transparency, and clarity, so that the public is fully aware of how travel and per diem arrangements are handled within government. It is also not a special rule for the Island Council, as we must also establish our own travel policy, which is currently being worked on by the Island Registrar's Office. Exceptions can exist only when justified based on function and responsibility, but the default basis is equal rules for all categories in government. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I now proceed to reading of the motion. So in our meeting dated today, November 19th, 2025, considering that equal treatment, fairness, and reasonableness are fundamental principles of good governance, Executive Council Decision, the 24th of February 2011, number 15-2011/2011, currently governs travel and per diem allowances for Executive Council members and civil servants, as well as Island Council. Travel allowances for civil servants must comply with the Rijksrekening, and which permits business class travel for flights of 6 hours or more. The Island Council is authorized under the WorldBest to adopt its own travel policy ordinance separately, and recognizing travel allowances should reflect realistic costs based on destination and duration. Fragmented policies cause inequality, administrative complexity, and public perception concerns. A unified framework for Executive Council members and civil servants enhances transparency, fairness, and administrative efficiency while maintaining the Island Council's authority to adopt separate rules. Hereby resolves that the Island Council instructs the Executive Council to draft, codify, and present to the Island Council for adoption a unified travel and per diem framework for Executive Council members, civil servants, and staff. This framework shall replace the Executive Council decision of 24th February 2011, number 154-2011. And the unified framework shall include at minimum standardized per diem amounts, to also include the transportation allowance be raised to $50 per travel day, separate from the per diem, a mandatory travel insurance for all official travel, and as well as travel class approvals and exceptions. Also directs the Executive Council to ensure all related costs are reflected under the appropriate budget lines: Executive Council budget, official travel and representation, and personal budget for civil servants, training and official travel, and the costs are to be absorbed within already approved budgets. Also requires semi-annual reporting by the Executive Council to the Island Council on implementation, usage, approvals, expenditures under this framework. confirms the separation of Island Council travel rules. The Island Council shall adopt its own separate travel ordinance in accordance with the World Best requirements, and the Island Registrar's Office will coordinate the drafting and presentation of that ordinance. And the effective date and the legal consistency, the unified travel and per diem framework for the Executive Council members and civil servants shall remain consistent with applicable best statutory travel regulations. The unified travel and per diem framework shall enter into effect by the first quarter of 2026, and after the Executive Council has finalized and formally adopted the framework, and it has been adopted by the Island Council, and it goes over to the order of the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Island Council member Ms. Every. Before I give it to the Island Council to discuss and debate the motion presented, as governor and portfolio holder, as you know, it's not my place to give a political voting advice, but I would like to address some of the legal, financial, and administrative, also feasibility aspects of the motion presented. So I have a few questions. Based on that, but before that, I'd like to make some general remarks about motions in general. As you know, as of late, but even in the future, there will be more motions presented and filed. But at times, the status of what a motion is a little bit confusing for the public in general. And so I'd like to just state that, for example, this motion mentions that the Island Council instructs the Executive Council, while a motion is actually less of a binding instruction, but more of a wish that the Island Council formulates towards the Executive Council. Ultimately, the decision stays with the Executive Council to carry out an adopted motion or not. So that's locally, but then also when we look towards in the European part of the Netherlands, in the second chamber, or also in the provinces. The role of the Island Council is more about setting the broader frameworks, and the Executive Council executes within those broad frameworks. This motion is very detailed in the executive tasks of the Executive Council. The Island Council is free to discuss anything and also file any motion and vote on it. So some general remarks. And then more specifically, I'd like to, first of all, the finance. The motion states that costs are to be absorbed within already approved budgets. However, the suggested adjustments, including higher per diem rates, transportation allowances, the possibility for broader eligibility for premium or business travel will result in an increase in total travel-related expenditures. Given that the Island Council holds the budgetary mandate, clarification is needed on how these additional costs will be covered. So my first question is, will the Council indicate which budget lines should be decreased to accommodate the higher costs? And the second one is, or is it the intention to limit or reduce the volume of travel to offset these increases within the existing budget contribution?
Yeah, for the first question, it's mentioned in the form, official travel and representation, and so the Executive Council budget, and the personal budget, training and official travel for civil servants.
Okay. Then the motion mentions that travel allowances for civil servants must comply with the Reisambtenaren Wet, Article 5, and the Regeling Buitenlandse Dienstreizen, which permits business class travel for flights of 6 hours or more. But when we looked it up, the mentioned Article 5 only stipulates if a portion of the business trip within the base location that connects to a portion of the trip by boat or plane is made using a private motor vehicle or moped, compensation of $37 per kilometer travel will be provided. Did you mean?
No, it was the article. That's why I did not read it, and I didn't update the motion itself. It's Article 3, and it's based on. It's an old article which references from the Netherlands about the travel for civil servants.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because when we look into that, the travel allowances for civil servants must comply with that. The second regulation does not exist anymore. The first regulation is only applicable to civil servants of the national government who fall under an entirely different framework. So the word must comply is a little difficult. And
what do you suggest, Governor? The framework is what is it, a hoofdleiding. The idea is to formulate a travel policy for civil servants as well as the executive council that also falls in line with what the national government is doing. So
then it's the unification there between the executive, the island, and the civil servant.
Correct.
But then, okay. And then, because also it's stated that the registrar will also have to, as you stated, the island's registrar. The island council shall adopt its own separate travel ordinance in accordance with the Wall-Best requirements. So then, that's also a separate one will be developed. Okay. And then, well, another challenge here is that the executive council decision cannot be adopted by the island council. That's a separate. Both councils have their own powers and responsibilities. So the island can control the executive council decision, but the executive council can't make a decision.
Yeah, I agree.
So the wording needs to.
I agree with you 100% because I also looked at the same document that was approved in 2011, where the decision was made to also include the island council, which I found also was not in compliance with. I believe the island council is the highest body, the executive council making a decision. So that's why I created this motion so that it's clear on the levels of representation who's doing what, who's in charge of what.
Yeah. No, that's clear. So then, like in the latter part of it, number 6, that it's the island council should develop it. When this was developed in 2011, at that time we were, just 3 months, 4 months into being a public entity. So at that time, we did it that way. But since then, we 14 years further, and the island council could have in those 14 years done it, but it worked for those years. So that's why the island council, I guess, left it that way. But if the island council wishes to change it, that is the right of the island council. Then the other thing is in the number 3, the travel class. As we all know, here in this region of the world, first class does not exist. It's business class. I think you mean business class. I don't think any other airlines have a first class, unless we do like other islands in the region with Dubai and everything other place. First class. So those are just my things. I leave it up to the council to further deliberate on the motion.
Mr. Chairman, I saw we are back again with this thing. It was one, bring the role, Commissioner Sagos, and justify that 2011 when we brought this together. And now, but I want for sure let me stepping up. Twice when I was commissioner, I traveled business class. We didn't pay for it. Mrs. Belgrave wanted me to go to Holland, and that was the only way. Open, the seats open, and my secretary, Ms. Granger, can testify to that. And lately, we all have been traveling in economic zone, a comfort zone, right? Because with my problem with my knees, I have to do that. You know what I mean? And I don't care at times where I sit after the plane, one plane, the same cases there, after I can just safe and sound. That's my, you know what I mean? So Yeah, after I usually say, it's all way. Help all on my feet. They may say, I for sure don't sit in business class. I said, it happened twice. Like I said, because they wanted me there, that was the only way. Yeah. I mean,
Point of clarification? Can I?
yeah.
Can I?
Yeah. First you want
No,
specifically on your hands or?
No, just for the record, in the motion itself, I also mentioned in the notes in regards to the premium travel, it refers to business class or the equivalent, offering enhanced comfort, rider seating, extra leg room, etc. And it's in the travel class approvals and exceptions, it's also divided into the different rules, staff standard, first class, maybe I should have mentioned a premium comfort, or premium or business class. And the different options, so if you want to upgrade, it's also allowed. Any external organizations that's providing the travel for you is also allowed. You can, but the only thing is if you're traveling for business class, that it has to be with justification. It does not say that you can't. It's just you have to have a good reason for why. Because I mean, it is public funding, whether it's we're paying for it or somebody else is paying for it. You know, so that's the reasoning behind that. Just to answer a question.
Other Councilor Charles?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just, because when I received the motion, I just didn't understand the rationale behind it. And then afterwards, you know, when I look at it, I realized specifically, you know, it's addressing the executive part of the organization and legislative part of the organization. And I have to question, you know, if we are overstepping our rules. Because I think part of it is like you mentioned earlier, that the rules were made, well, the current decree also includes Island Council.
Correct.
So I don't think that we should then say, well, because the current rules include Island Council, that no, you have to go and make a document for yourself. You understand? So I think that's number one. It's the job of the executive branch to control the executive branch. It's our, well, to regulate the executive branch. Control the executive branch is our responsibility. So I think that's something that I think it's not clear to me what exactly is the rationale behind this. And then I think the governor asked a very good question, and I think because of our role in terms of financial oversight is important. How much does it cost if you pass this motion? That's very important because it clearly has financial implications, and I don't think, considering we just passed the budget last month, that we should be making passing motions that we don't really necessarily take the financial impact into consideration. Also, going back to what Dr. said, you mentioned that you're instructing the executive council to retract the decision of its own, and I don't think that that's exactly the job of the Island Council to say, hey, you have this procedure, and then you have to change it. I don't know if you have the legal right to do that. Going back to, especially when it doesn't concern legislation. Some of the periods where we get the mandate to make that instruction. And then the question is, where does the current system fail based on fairness, equality, or transparency? Because you mentioned that
Yes.
quite a bit.
Here's my questions. All right. The first question was about there was a lot of questions. So can you
The first question
give me a
was,
summary of your questions?
yeah, the first question was about where did you, what was the rationale behind it?
Yeah, the rationale actually triggered. It was triggered during one of our trips to the Netherlands, where I saw we were all together, and at a certain moment I saw a difference where one of the executive council members headed to business class, and everybody else, the department heads and everyone else went to the back of the plane. I, for one, am not looking for first class, so that was the actual trigger. And I asked questions about it, because this thing happened, I think around the beginning of this year, actually last year. And so I inquired about it, and the response I received was not really satisfactory. So I kept digging deeper and deeper, to find out, okay, what's the rationale behind why is this done? And it was a decision that the NASA's Act was taken care of. So okay, where's the documentation for that, or where's the framework for that? Why is there a distinction? Why? And then I inquired a little bit deeper, and I got the document where the decision was made in 2011, and I was like, okay, this is not fair in my purview, So I said, okay, we need to really come with something that I believe is fair for everyone across the board. I mean, I do work for the national government, and based on that, I feel that based on that whole arrangement that we have, I feel it's done fairly, where everyone is treated the same. Everyone is also free to upgrade if they want to, and it doesn't mean that you can't upgrade. It's just it has to be justified. So if I ask a question about it and there's no, why can't there be an answer to it? So it's based. That's the reasoning behind that. The first question, and my second to that question, not to question for question, but do you not think that almost 15 years later, something should have been updated in regards to the travel policy within Saba, the government?
I'm not saying that they don't have to have an update. I'm just saying I'm asking whether or not it's our job to update things like it's called travel policy.
Is it their job to update our travel policy?
Clearly not.
Exactly.
You explain.
So this is the reason. This is also.
But also, if you think about it, right?
No,
just because you're saying that you say it, that they shouldn't. Our responsibility is our policy. Their responsibility.
I'm saying.
So they don't have responsibility for us.
Correct. I'm saying.
Correct. Right.
I'm saying.
No. Is that what you're saying?
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, the governor mentioned it that this was a decision that was made right after 10-10-10, which is we're a green organization, growing. However, here we are 15 years later, and nobody talked about, hey, let's actually put things in accordance, make things a level playing field, and also within the law.
So what shouldn't be the first job then, that we pass our own travel policy?
Well, that was also a question to the registrar's office, but the registrar's office is, as we all know, is just, the registrar's office is this person right here sitting, and that's a little bit too much to ask. That's why she's also.
There's another mechanism.
But let me finish. So there's other things happening at the moment where she is receiving assistance. I shouldn't refer to as she, but the registrar's office is receiving assistance in the form of, coaching in regards to the same. That's why it's mentioned that we are working on our own.
But also, we could also ask under the baseline. That's also an option. So then the office specifically can say, hey, we like under, and then we can establish our own policy first, rather than trying to tell the executive council, hey, we don't have policy, we think we should have one, but you do have one first.
We have to start somewhere, and I think if we're going
Well,
to
then
start,
we should start with us.
well, we're also working on us, so I think we can do things together. What was your other question?
The cost. How much does it cost?
How much does it cost? I did not do a cost calculation. I just mentioned that it should be taken out.
That's a very, because that's the most important part, I think, because if it does have additional costs, we should be passing motion that we're not aware of the implications.
But just for the sake of clarity, the motion also asks, orders, as the executive council to actually come back with a codified document, a policy then basically stated exactly. And in that should have the cost.
Yeah, but you're also instructing them to absorb the cost.
Yeah.
But how much is it? So you didn't do the research?
I did research.
Not on the amount.
And your other question?
We haven't had a nice political.
What's the
Nor really the political reasons of the executive council. That's why I leave it a little bit. But nonetheless,
How is the current system feel of fairness, equality, and transparency?
I think if you speak to the civil service, which I do have discussions with some of the civil service, and I'll be honest with you, the document that I mentioned, and I deliberately did not mention the amounts into the motion. It's in the motion. There's a reason why I did not deliberately, because I believe that some civil service, they're not aware of this. They just know this is what it is and that's it. And they feel that they cannot ask questions. I'm just going to state it like that. So that's the reasoning as well.
So
Right.
what they feel, what exactly is the feel?
It's not being fairly, it's not being done fairly across the board.
And what's the unfair, well, which is another question, what's the unfair aspect of it?
Let me just give it to you this way. Those who make more should not receive more. That's basically, that's the gist of this motion. Those who receive more should not have to get more, right? It should be equal for everyone, right?
You're firemen,
Correct.
right? And they don't have any difference in the fire department, based on anything?
The only difference in the fire department is the ranking system. If I travel the same way as one of my manscaped. There's no difference, right? So it's good that you brought up that point. I am a fireman. I'm a fire chief.
Yeah, and my question is there no difference? There are differences in our organization.
And ranking, of course,
And so there could be differences in the organization for various reasons.
definitely.
And I think we shouldn't be always one defining whether those differences are justified or they can be expressed. Or they can be
100%.
expressed.
There are differences, and because of those differences and the position that you hold, it does not say that you cannot upgrade, you cannot request an upgrade. The motion is basically saying that you need to justify why you deserve an upgrade and why the sweeper does not.
And I don't know if the executive council considered upgrades aren't possible.
Who said it's not possible?
That's what you're saying.
No. It's possible, but you just have to justify why.
No, but is it not possible now?
Did you read the document of 2011? I should have included that into the attachments. If we can adjourn, and we can have that printed out so that Mr. Charles can receive that copy.
It's a public document.
Yeah.
It's unrelated.
Yeah? Sure.
Councilor Charles, do you have any more questions?
I think we can move it.
We have any
Questions?
other questions?
Just ask him an opinion.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I was zoning out a little bit. So, I understand the reasoning behind the motion 100%, and yeah, especially the last thing that you said, because yeah, if you going on with minimum wage, you traveling, you get in the amount that you get, and you go into certain places, it is really not fair. But I will say that I think, based on the comments from the governor, maybe some things will be adjusted to make it a little bit clearer, especially for Mr. Charles, even. But I think it is something that we need to look at and see then even how to get to the result that we want. So that's it for me, Mr. Chair.
Well, I think the result isn't necessarily a motion, to be fair. I think this could have been a conversation. Just hey, do you think there's a need to update your policy? I mean, you didn't come into the Island Council yesterday.
That is correct.
You know, and I haven't been a council member yesterday either. So we can all take responsibility for our inaction or action. And I think in this case, it's a very heavy-handed instrument for something that you could just say, hey, you know what? This is something that needs to be changed, and we can also.
Do you think that that's not the route that initially started? To find out about this?
I don't, to be very honest with you,
But that is the first question you should ask. You know, it's, okay, did you take those steps? I didn't just.
I haven't been to a meeting that you called where this was a discussion, other than today.
Well, you said it could have just been a conversation or a phone call.
Well, no, I said a conversation, I mean a formal conversation.
Yes, that's clear.
Is there any more need for discussion and deliberation on the motion? And can we proceed to voting on the motion?
And I have a question, Mr. Chair. So, I mean, Councilman Charles, can you clarify what you were just talking about the conversation, an official conversation?
Or like an information market, a request for a meeting with the executive council. That's right.
Okay.
Then we could all stick it up.
Can we proceed then to a vote on the motion? Beginning with item Councilman
Mr. Chairman, I abstain from voting because I believe we should sit down and discuss this thing more.
You can't abstain from voting.
Yeah, that's no, then. No.
Item Councilman Charles.
I also vote no.
Item Council Lady Ms. Sasha Matthews.
I vote for it.
Item Councilman Mr. Julio Avery.
I want to just motivate my vote, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I'm going to vote for. The reason why I'm voting for it is because obviously my colleagues across the table don't feel there's a need to upgrade the system as it is at the moment, presently. And I find it's a very sad day because the civil service is the ones who actually would be the ones benefiting from this. And it's sad to see that you guys actually vote against this. And yeah, again, like I said, I vote for Mr. Chairman.
As you can see, the item council consists of 5 persons. There's only 4 present today, so there's 2 for and 2 against. So that means that this motion will have to come back at a second item council meeting at another time when there's a majority or odd number in the. Another time then we have to.
Maybe they can change the mind.
But before concluding it, saying, so it has to, so conclude that it has to come again. But before that, I do think, as a suggestion, is that there could be a meeting called by the registrar together with the island and executive councils to go over the different things, because there are points in it that could be done and updated, and then also assistance could be provided to a registrar in point number 6, the one about the island council travel policy, the separate island council travel policy. So those things could be done at a meeting with the island council and executive council.
A point of order.
Yes.
I just also wanted to clarify this idea about not disadvantaging versus continuing the idea of disadvantaging persons, because that's not what any one of us on this side stand for either.
That's not point of order. That's a point of
clarification. That's not what any of us on this side is, or anyone at this table stand for. So I think that creating that perspective or that perception, as you mentioned, emotion, is also uncalled for.
Point of
I think at the end of the day, as much as possible, we have to do what we have to do with the benefit of the population, the people of this island who we are elected and appointed to represent. With that, so this motion will come back in a subsequent island council meeting. With that, because it had 2 votes for and 2 votes against. So with that, we now move to agenda point number 8, the closing. With that, I'd like to thank everyone for your presence here this afternoon and have a good evening. Thank you.